Howdy, soldiers. Nothing quite says, have a holly jolly Christmas quite like teeth. I bought this shirt as a Christmas gift to myself, so I think it counts as part of the holiday season. Plus, you know I decorate my house with bones all year long. Look at that. Isn't she cute? I got her at the Weirdos Market along with this shirt. If you're watching this video, that means that you somehow survived the holidays, or at least the beginning part of the holidays. Congratulations. That I know must have been a feat, but it is not quite the end of the year yet, so we are still within the shackles of 2023. And that means that I didn't want to do my best books of the year just yet, because I still have a couple days, and I'm kind of in the middle of a couple books right now, so maybe I'm gonna find a new favorite in the next, 6 days. So for my official last video of the year, I just wanted to do some kind of cozy, chill, maybe December wrap up, but then again, I also didn't really do a November wrap up, so we're gonna call this a what I've been reading this winter wrap up. I got my tea, I got my sweatpants, I got my stack of books I want to talk about, so without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in as we just go over some of the books that I've been reading while it's cold outside. First up is an adventurous, heartwarming blast of nostalgia. I finished Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. The two things that I love: books and bones. This is a standalone prequel to Legends and Lattes, which is also so sweet and adorable, cozy fantasy. And in here we follow a newly stabbed warrior orc, a small but incensed bookstore owner, a 3-foot-tall dwarf who only speaks in threats, a snake woman who loves her job, a tough baker businesswoman who works molasses into everything, and a sentient bag of bones that are all involved in a seaside bookshop remodel. Well, something looming in the distance is coming closer, and it's part of Viv's past, and maybe there's something in the bookshop that could help with it. Oh baby, we're eating pastries, we're pulling swords out of books, we're dueling necromancers. Sounds like a perfect first date to me. His writing has really matured in this book, and a lot of his words make my brain so happy. Having a fun time learning the joys of reading and friendship and gnomish pastry, while also having subtle themes of pushing back against authority and not making snap judgments on first impressions, and how sometimes people will come into your life and they're not there to stay forever, and that's okay. Thank you, Travis Baldree, for making me cry while also giving me the energy of forcing your friends into a book club. Another book I had a lovely time with that was definitely aggressively infused with Christmas cheer was Holly Jolly Ever After by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This was sent to me by Avon HarperCollins, so thank you very much for steaming up my winter. This is the companion slash sort of sequel to A Merry Little Meet Cute, which I read last year and absolutely loved, where ex-band member Callum has been kind of out of the public eye doing his own thing for a couple of years when his sex tape leaks, and suddenly this movie production studio wants him to star in this new steamy, sexy Christmas movie that they're producing, and he decides that he's ready to step back into the spotlight again. And we also follow Winnie, who has made her career as this squeaky clean, kind of Christian girl, Hallmark Christmas movie actress, but her once perfect image is falling apart, and she decides that she wants to take her career back into her own hands, so she signs up to do this sexy Christmas movie. So of course the two of them are once again confronting each other and confronting their feelings while filming a ridiculous movie, and the rest of their lives catch up with them. I respect Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone for digging into kind of the Christian movie sphere. There's a lot of talk about purity culture, the repression and oppression of growing up religious, also an exploration of male insecurity, male body insecurity, and how celebrity affects Callum. So that was unexpected, that I loved. And usually I don't like pop culture references in books, but the one pop culture reference that came up in this was Spooky Lake Month. I love that so much. Yes, hello, it's Spooky Lake Month and we're doing 31 days of haunted hydrology. Also, these authors want you to know that Callum is thick, okay? We get all these references to his broad shoulders and his tree trunk thighs and his massive hands, and I'm like, okay, you guys need to relax. But something that this snuck up on me. This snuck in a pregnancy trope, and I was not prepared for it. Oh my god, I was so mad! But I kept reading. And you know what? I'm kind of okay with it. My reason for not liking pregnancy tropes is because usually pregnancy trope is just used for dramatic effect. There's no actual baby. You literally could replace the word baby with a house plant and it wouldn't matter, because it never matters. That's the thing. Because this pregnancy actually caused real emotional change and conversation. Winnie goes through this whole arc of loving how goofy and outrageous Callum is, but then when thinking of him as a father, she gets really nervous and she literally goes to him and is like, okay, if you want to be in this child's life, you need to nut up and like get your shit together. And finally, Callum gets to see his behavior reflected back at him with some of his nephew's choices and like realizes the consequences and like who he's hurt in the past with his behavior and like decides to change himself so that he could be a better father to this child. And I was like, oh my god, this is beautiful. So yeah, this book was hot, sexy, emotional, Christmassy, just it was great. The other festive novel I indulged my inner holiday elf with was Have Yourself a Magic Little Murder by Meg Mazzaferro. Meg is a TikTok mutual of mine and the absolute sweetest, so I'm so excited for her that she's finally published her first book. Have Yourself a Magic Little Murder is a holiday mystery around Rachel Fernhallow, who is an exiled witch, and since she's banned from using magic, she has to take a job as a holiday elf at the local mall, but when a sleazy coworker of hers ends up dead in a back hallway with Rachel's fingerprints on a tape gun nearby, the police think that she did it. So with her job and reputation on the line, she decides to launch an investigation herself to figure out who murdered this guy and hopefully do it in time for Christmas. As somebody who worked many years of Christmas retail, the mall employee culture in this book is so real. The way that all the mall employees talk when they're alone and like bitching about customers being awful over the holidays and like having to wear silly little outfits. Like I was sitting here being like, it's an MC named Rachel. She has to work at a mall during Christmas rush and wear a funny outfit. Is this fucking book about me? But this Rachel must have Christmas magic because people in this book just conveniently keep giving her things. And I really like the roommates plot line, like at the very end, kind of Katie like finally giving her a mug and Amy pausing the show that she's watching for her. And I was like, oh my god, this is so cute. It really is the small things. I did think the ending was a little random and like, okay, but was murder the answer? I do want to know more about this magic world though. Like the whole witch system of justice, besides being fucked up, sounds really interesting. So I hope that we get more into that in subsequent novels, because there was a big cliffhanger at the end of this, so it looks like I'm gonna have to read the sequel. So if you like witches and cozy crime novels for the holiday season, this might be for you. Something not holiday related at all, but that I was equally excited about, because my inner horse girl was losing her shit while reading This Dark Descent by Kaylin Josephson. This was sent to me by the author, and Kaylin, you're my new number one, because this is a 1930s maybe-esque fantasy world that's based on Jewish folklore that is basically Hunger Games, but with horse races. In the country of Enderlane, we have the Illinir, which are a series of horse races that end in deadly results, but much fame and fortune if you can win. And in this, we follow three characters, all wrapped up in the races for their own reasons. Makira, who is the daughter of a once famous horse breeder, who wants to win the races to get the boon from the king to free her father, who was unjustly jailed. We have Ariel, a unlicensed enchanter who makes a golem horse for Makira to ride on. And then we have Damien, who's a young lord caught in a succession web, and he is trying to use both Makira and Ariel to win the Illinir for his own possibly nefarious plans. It throws you into the beginning and just goes from there. It is vicious races and people searching for revenge and political machinations everywhere. This has a very intricate political and specifically religious system than I was expecting in a YA, but I absolutely loved it. Like, we are going after the church. Everybody in this book is morally questionable, except maybe Makira, but like, she's no fun. There's big themes on what will you do to gain power? How will you keep it? And what if you like it? I freaking loved this book. So if you're a horse girl or a Hunger Games fan, or hell, if you want Kaz and Inej from Six of Crows to just like be in a stable sometimes, I would highly recommend this book. Something I read in November that really set off the sinister tone of some of the books I picked up this winter was Gorgeous Gruesome Faces by Linda Chang, a YA psychological thriller that deep dives into toxic friendships, idol obsessions, and baby gays. I got an advance copy of this from Ringcoast, and then I got this beautiful copy from when I went to the launch party at Iron Dog Books. This is like if Uncanny Valley was a book. After a shocking scandal ended her pop star career, now ex-idol Sunny has been staying out of the public eye, cyber-stalking her ex-best friend, and trying her best to remember what happened that scandalous night. When she finds out that her ex-best friend and former groupmate Candy is participating in a local K-pop dance competition, she decides to sign up for it as well to go and confront her about what happened with Mina, who was the third of their group. Once she's there, sinister things start happening and dreams and reality start fracturing in her mind, and we need to get to the bottom of what's actually happening at this workshop. A little K-drama, a little Black Swan, a little like Nickelodeon, If We're in Hell. Our author was inspired by the cutthroat industry of K-pop, and it really shows in here, particularly the like really harsh training sessions and the curation of an online persona. I did think the beginning was a little confusing. Like, I think we should have established the hallucinations a little bit more. And then also this turned into like a bit of a fantasy at the end, which was interesting. Like, definitely not something I've read before. This is really good for beginners of psychological horror. Like, there's just like a little bit of body horror. There's like a little bit of emotional damage. There's just like a little bit of reality bending. Next up was something that took me a little while to get into, but I'm so glad that I read it. However visceral and bloody that it was, it's The Spirit Bares Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. If you have problems with body horror that involves eyes and or pregnancy like I do, this was hard to read. It's 1883 in London, and the veil between our world and the spiritual is beginning to thin. So we have the Speaker Society, who has taken over as the main form of government. And our main character is Silas, a trans boy with purple eyes, who is being groomed by his family to be the perfect speaker wife, but when an escape attempt for an arranged marriage goes awry, he's sent to this sanatorium to cure his spirit madness. But when he's there, spirits of the dead start reaching out to him, telling him about horrible things that are happening in this boarding school sanatorium, and he has to figure out what's going on before maybe he's next. Oh my god, this had some hard themes to read. Silas is autistic, so we have a lot of mistreatment of autistic people. We have the intersection of autism and gender, the unsaid expectations of women and our struggle for autonomy. And as women, or people who are perceived as women, are shaped by others to be palatable to men, like what part of ourself remains. But really surprised by the amount of nuance towards motherhood, and particularly trans parenthood, the relationship that trans people have with their bodies when it comes to biological parenting. And oh my god, Daphne, if you read this book, oh my, I cried. I straight up cried. If you want to get into any of Andrew Joseph White's books, please check the content warnings, because it gets intense. And the ending was wild. I had like 100 pages left, and it was like midnight, and I was debating whether to go to bed or not, and then I turned the page and was like, absolutely not, I need to finish reading this book tonight. Brutal and cruel and visceral and grotesque and extremely compelling. So if you like psychological horror novels that have to do with an autistic trans main character, I'd highly recommend this. Moving on, another queer book that was thankfully less grotesque, but no less thought-provoking, was What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen, where journalist Angela Chen uses her own asexuality as a jumping-off point to educate and discuss asexuality, particularly in a culture that is so subtly sex-obsessed. Now, I am not asexual, but I have people in my life who are, and I felt like this was something that I knew the least about and had read the least about. And she goes into a really good breakdown of desire, boundaries, friendship, and compulsory sexuality. Your internal and external understanding and definition of sex and closeness and intimacy changes depending on your gender, your race, your faith, your political leaning, as well as the whitewashing and racism within the ace community, and how different cultures look at asexuality. And of course, asexuality is not a one-size-fits-all. Some ace people still enjoy sex, some don't, some are repulsed, some like it sometimes. She actually gives a really good example that she comps to food. So she says, let's say crackers. You can be ambivalent towards crackers, like you might not eat them unless maybe they're directly in front of you or they're part of a social ritual. Maybe someone puts a thing of crackers in front of you and you actively push them away. Maybe sometimes you're hungry but you don't want to eat crackers. My only thing about this that threw me off is that I read this as an audiobook, and the audiobook narrator had a very romance novel cadence to her voice. So it was very odd listening to her sensually tell me about asexuality in my ear for like 11 hours. But overall, a great book. I think this would be good for anybody who doesn't have any knowledge of asexuality, or who already has like a decent foundation but still wants to know a little bit more about like how to connect with maybe different parts of yourself or like different parts of your society and your asexuality. And I finally finished this next book in December. And I say finally because this book has taken me like 3 freaking months to read, not because it's bad. I really, really enjoyed it, but just because it's so dense that like after every chapter, I needed to like put the book down and be like, all right, I just need a couple minutes to process what I just read. This YA urban fantasy adventure novel about reluctant heroes, gay teenagers, and all of the fairy court drama that you could possibly want was A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. Big OG City of Bones energy, but with fairy courts. In a modern day Toronto. I live on the West Coast in Vancouver, so I'm contractually obligated to make fun of Toronto at least once per calendar quarter, where we follow a half-fae, ironborn princess of a fairy court, a fallen fury desperate for revenge, an unseelie prince hoping to prove himself to his court, and the prince's bodyguard with a magical secret of his own, as the 4 of them get involved in a series of ironborn murders that are happening in the fairy world that the high fae courts are doing nothing to stop. And they must form a tenuous alliance to figure out what's actually going on, and then they get roped in to a bigger plot conspiracy than they ever could have imagined. First thing I love is how many redheads are in the fae courts. I mean, there's absolutely nothing about having red hair that's special. Haha, just joking. You get underground goblin markets and fae courts within shiny downtown apartment buildings, secret alchemy compounds in the Nevada desert, and people actually using their phones. This is what technology was meant for, finally. I especially love that one of our main characters, Arlo, is, you know, oh, the prophecy one, the one that can help all this stuff, and she is very much so like, I am not a hero, leave me alone, goodbye. One of our main themes in this that she says over and over again is like, we're just kids. Like, we should not be in charge of this investigation. The adults, our government, our fairy courts should be the ones who are in control of this, but they're not. How many freaking YA books are there out there of teenagers having to save the world? And them finally being like, no, this should not be my job. Like, I'm accidentally here, but like, I did not sign up to be a hero. There are some dark themes in this, like government collapse and using magic for evil, the mental health of immortals, and how compassion is what makes us human, but also a constant stream of jokes and sass from all these messy, immortal, chaotic gays. Nausicaa in particular does not give a shit. She's hilarious. Also, I love that the High King of Fairy loves Timbits. Like, yes, girl, love that representation. An amazing combination of this gritty urban fantasy folklore with this beautiful magical description of the fae courts and the fae realms, yet also some quippy, sassy teenagers who are just out there trying their best, and they're gay and chaotic. Like, I enjoyed this book way more than I was expecting to, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the rest of the series. If you think you're ready for my last book, I would think again, because I was not ready for how absolutely freaking obsessed I have become over this book. A dark academia, secret society, murder mystery that is based on tide magic and lunar arcana. It is Curious Tides by Pascal Lassalle. Ooh, that's my shit right there. Emery is a student at the Aldrin Academy for Lunar Magics, who at the end of her last semester accidentally interrupted this dark magic ritual that killed 8 of her classmates. Now it's the beginning of a new school year, and she's discovered that she has this new type of dark magic that she didn't have before. So in an attempt to understand what's going on with her and also her ex-best friend who died in this ritual, she decides to try and infiltrate this cult-like secret society that she believes was behind the ritual. And as she befriends people in this society, as well as getting closer to the brother of one of her friends who died, she finds out that there is, say it with me folks, a dark conspiracy that is bigger than she ever would have thought. I understand why this book is so long, because she's doing a lot. I loved the lore of this book and how Pascal like kept pushing it to its limits. The way that this like other dimensional magic mystery just kept ramping up was so exciting and very engaging. Ooh, and the cyclical storytelling, particularly with how each main part of the book starts with a page of a story that is in the world already as a folktale, and how we're incorporating aspects of that legend into this story, and it's like, where does one end and the other begin? The second half was a little predictable, but then at the same time, I did not see any of the end coming. And forget this whole romantic idea of like, get you a guy who will make you coffee in the morning, like get you a guy who will turn back time for you. Oh my god, this is absolutely phenomenal. And as a debut, exceptional. If you want a book that is a little bit ninth house, a little bit Atlas 6, a little bit study and drowning, like, you gotta pick this up. Like I said, I'm about to make this my whole personality, so be ready for 2024. And as a little bit of a bonus book, for these wrap-ups, I usually only talk about books that I finished, but I'm currently in the middle of one, and you know what? It's Christmas, okay? I'm in the spirit of giving. I want to briefly talk about a book that I am halfway through, and that is A Shadow Crown by Melissa Blair. This is a sequel to A Broken Blade, which is a high fantasy fae novel about Kira, who's a half-elf assassin for the king, and it turns out that she uncovers a conspiracy against the crown and then has to go into the fae world, and oh my god, betrayal and swords. I really like the first one. I am loving the second one. Oh my god, we're actually seeing the consequences of our actions play out. Holy shit, who could have guessed? She's really expanding the Fey wilds in particular, and ooh, I love that shit. We're getting way more into political drama and shifting alliances, the consequences of war and colonization hurting multiple generations. I don't want to say too much about it because I have a feeling it's gonna be one of my top books of the year. So that will probably be for next week's video, but I mean, I started this last night and I'm already halfway through, so it's great. And that is that on that. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon as I ranted and raved about some of the books that I've been reading this winter. All these people putting out their best books of the year on like December 1st. Like, baby, don't limit yourself like that. You got a whole month to discover some new favorites. I think I have at least 3 new favorites, and I've read these in the last like 4 weeks. I hope all of you are having a safe and cozy winter and a very happy holidays, whatever you celebrate in the winter time. As a white lady on the west coast of Canada, I do in fact celebrate Christmas. But as an atheist, I decorate my tree with bones. You guys already saw the little vertebrae, but like, you know, what else we got on here? We got some dinosaurs, we got some dragons, we have a little T-Rex tree topper who he's hanging on like the star that he is. This is what happens when you leave the goth in charge of decorating for Christmas. Thank you everybody for being here and making my 2023 such a lovely reading year. You know where to click to like the video. You know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week and next year. Bye!